Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Alright guys, I am super stoked to be bringing you this retro motorcycle comparison video. This time we're looking at Kawasaki's ZRX1100 and Honda's CB1100 motorcycle. I have reviewed each of these motorcycles previously on this channel, so if you want to take an in-depth look at either of these bikes, where I talk about the history and the specs and the performance of the bikes, and then I take them out on the road for a thorough road test, I will include a link to those in the description section of this video. On paper, there's a lot of similarities between these bikes. These are both large inline four-cylinder Superbike UJM styled motorcycles that are meant to emulate bikes from the 70s and 80s. In this video, we'll go through each of these bikes in detail, and then we'll take them out on the road to see what they're like to ride. And even though when you look at these bikes, there are so many similarities, these bikes have two very different characters out on the road. At the end of this video, I'm going to give my thoughts on each of these machines. We'll talk about any advantages either one has over the other, so you definitely want to stay tuned for that. If you like great motorcycle content and you want to help support this channel, please consider becoming a member. Members get perks like early access to new videos and bonus content on this channel, and your support will help me continue to make great quality motorcycling videos for you to enjoy. And I just want to give a special shout out to all of my members and subscribers and those of you who participate in the comment section of this channel. Thank you guys so much. I could not do this without you. Without further ado, let's check out the CB1100. Looking at the history of the CB1100, in the US, the CB1100 was introduced in 2013. Honda has a very long-standing history of producing air-cooled inline four-cylinder engines. This tradition really started with the original CB750 that was so popular through the late 60s and 70s and even into the 80s. The original CB750 was not meant to be an all-out performance world beater. It was not as quick as the two-stroke machines of the time, but it was a very refined package. It was a very nice place to be. It was a reliable machine, and that is really what it's known for. The CB1100 was really designed with those same parameters in mind, and although its looks are somewhat on the aggressive side, it's really not a performance model. And to me, the styling of the CB1100, though I really like it, really belies its true nature, but we'll get into that in a little bit in the ride portion. Looking at the technical specs of the bike, the CB1100 is powered by an 1140cc inline four-cylinder engine. The engine is a dual overhead cam, 4-valve per cylinder design. It is an air and oil cooled design. It has a large oil cooler in front of the engine. It is fed by a bank of 4 32mm fuel injection throttle bodies. Performance-wise, on the dyno, the CB1100 put out 82.5 horsepower at 7,500 RPM, and that is at the rear wheel. It also puts out 64.7 foot-pounds of torque at the rear wheel. And the crazy thing about this engine is that it makes above 55 foot-pounds of torque from 2,000 RPM all the way up past 7,500 RPM, and that's an incredibly flat torque curve. And it really means that in any gear, this bike just pulls very nicely, very cleanly from anything above 2,000 RPM. In a straight line, the CB1100 clocks off a 3.3 second 0 to 60 mile an hour time. It also runs a quarter mile in 11.79 seconds at 110.8 miles per hour. The later 2014 and up bikes feature a 6-speed transmission, and that is mated to chain final drive. At first glance, the dash on the CB1100 looks very traditional. It has a large speedometer and a large tachometer. There's also a gear indicator on there and a fuel gauge, and there's even a trip meter on there as well, and some other nice functions. The CB1100 also features a hydraulic clutch, and the clutch actuation is very light and very easy. The frame is a steel tube cradle type frame. Looking at the suspension, up front it features 41mm Showa forks. These have spring preload adjustment and 4.2 inches of travel. Out back, it features the conventional style dual rear shocks with spring preload adjustment and 4.5 inches of travel. In the braking department up front, it has large dual disc brakes with 4 piston calipers acting on those. Out back, it has a large disc brake with a single piston caliper acting on that. The wheels on the CB1100 are 18-inch wheels, front and back. And just to note here, those tire sizes are not super common, so you do have somewhat limited tire availability on this bike. Wet weight is 556 pounds. Fuel capacity on the CB1100 is 3.9 gallons on the standard model. I'm 6'4", and you can see in this picture, I fit on this bike very nicely. I think it has very nice ergonomics. I really like the seat to bar relationship, and it's a comfortable long distance bike. What is the CB1100 like to ride? I'm gonna gear up, I'll bring the camera along. Let's find out together. Let's ride.
I am currently riding Honda's 2014 CB1100. And the first thing I'm noticing is how nice and roomy this cockpit is, especially for my upper body. I've got plenty of room. The bars are just about perfectly angled, and I really find it very, very comfortable. I'm a tall guy at 6'4", so I don't have quite as much leg room as I would like, but it's about typical for the class. Looking at the dash, I love the fact that this has a big gear indicator and a fuel gauge, in addition to the tach and the speedometer. Clutch action is very light. Yeah, that transitions nicely from side to side. The big 4-cylinder is very smooth. I do notice that the gearing is quite tall, and so I need to keep the bike in a lower gear than I would on other bikes with shorter gearing. Well, it picks up quite nicely. Because of the tall gearing, this bike has a very relaxed feel. It also has a very stable feel to it. And there's that instant torque. Do not have to carry a lot of revs. The 4-into-1 exhaust system has a catalytic converter in it, and it is honestly very quiet. This bike is very, very easy to ride. The throttle take up, especially with that tall gearing, is very smooth. I'll do a quick run up through the gears here. got plenty of poke. One of the things that I noticed right away on the CB1100 is that when I am getting on the brakes a little bit more aggressively, that has a significant amount of front end dive to it. To me, it definitely needs a little bit more damping in the front end. I think some heavier fork oil would go a long way to making the suspension a little bit more to my taste. But the way that it's set up, it's more on the plush side, and it allows the bike to soak up bumps very easily and very smoothly. The transmission is very smooth. It shifts through the gears nicely and positively. Get a little bit of bounce through some of the corners. And again, that's really a function of the damping or lack thereof on the suspension. I can tell that this is a tune for torque motor because it honestly doesn't seem to rev all that quickly, and it doesn't necessarily pay to run it all the way to redline. You probably go almost as quickly just short shifting up through the gears. Yeah, still quick. I'm a bit of a jaded performance rider, and so I get it. Not everybody is wanting to get that last degree of performance out of their bike. The brakes definitely function better than any of my classic big bore bikes. The overall feel of this bike is very polished, very refined. It's a bit of a breezy day, and the stability on this bike is really nice. I'm used to getting blown around a little bit more on other naked standard style machines, but this one is very stable. Oh, that's fun. Very nice. Yeah, it's shocking to me how tall the gearing on this bike is. I'm doing 60 miles an hour and I'm not revving quite 3,000 RPM. In fact, to get to 3,000 RPM, I have to be doing 65 miles an hour. If I had to describe the riding experience of the Honda CB1100, I would say it is very refined. It's very smooth. I've ridden this bike for over an hour at a time, and the seat remains comfortable. The ergonomics are great. I don't have any sore spots or real points of contention. Of the retro bikes I've ridden, this would probably make the best touring machine of the bunch. It would also make a great commuter. Yeah, 50 miles an hour in 6th gear, I can't tell you how smooth and relaxed feeling this bike is. It would just eat up mile after mile of country roads at this pace for sure. Very nice.
All right, let's check out the ZRX1100. Looking at the history of the ZRX1100, the ZRX1100 debuted in 1999 in the US. It was designed from the outset to be a retro motorcycle. It is designed to look like the Kawasaki Superbikes of the early 80s. Not only does the ZRX look like a superbike from the 80s, it also has some pretty serious performance to back up those aggressive looks. To give the ZRX serious punch out on the road, Kawasaki used a version of the motor that was found in their ZX11 Ninja motorcycle. In the ZRX, the motor was retuned for torque, and it was tuned to deliver peak torque where you need it most in street riding, and that's between 2,000 and 7,000 RPM. Looking at the technical specs on the ZRX, as I said before, it is powered by a 1052cc liquid-cooled inline 4-cylinder motor. It has dual overhead cams, and it features 4 valves per cylinder. It is fed by a bank of 4 36mm carburetors. The ZRX motor also features a counterbalancer to keep things smooth, and it is a smooth power plant out on the road. Peak horsepower on the ZRX is 96.8 horsepower at right around 8,500 RPM, and the peak torque is 71.2 foot-pounds of torque at 5,750 RPM. What's really impressive is that the ZRX makes over 60 foot-pounds of torque between 3,000 RPM and 8,500 RPM. Looking at the performance specs on the ZRX, it runs 0 to 60 miles an hour in 2.9 seconds. It clocks off a quarter-mile time in the low 11-second range at 120 miles an hour. And the ZRX goes on to a top speed of 145 miles an hour, which is blisteringly fast on a bike where you're sitting pretty upright and you don't have all that much wind protection. Instrumentation on the ZRX is simple. It's nicely turned out. It looks attractive when you look at it. It has a large speedometer. It has a fuel gauge in the middle and a large tachometer. Bike has a 10,500 RPM red line. The clutch is hydraulically activated and it gives nice smooth engagement. The motor was mated to a slick shifting 5-speed transmission, and the ZRX features chain final drive. One of the really cool features that Kawasaki has on the ZRX is a tubular aluminum rear swing arm. This is a braced swing arm, and it's designed to look like the braced swing arm on their Superbike racers from the 80s. The frame on the ZRX is a double cradle steel tube frame. The suspension on the ZRX is also quite impressive. Up front, it has 43mm conventional looking forks, and although they look conventional, they are cartridge style forks, and they feature spring preload adjustment, rebound adjustment, and compression damping adjustment. So it's fully adjustable up front. Likewise, out back, the conventional looking rear shocks on the ZRX are also fully adjustable. So you can adjust the spring preload, the rebound damping, and the compression damping on these as well. In the braking department, the ZRX features huge 6-piston calipers, and these are grabbing large 310mm dual rotors up front. Out back, the ZRX has a 250mm single disc, and that is acted on by a dual piston caliper. The ZRX features 17-inch wheels, front and back. Those tire sizes are very common, and so when you're looking for tires for a ZRX, you have a wide range of matching sets of tires available for this bike, and that's really, really nice. Wet weight on the ZRX is 545 pounds, and it features a 5.3 gallon gas tank. That large gas tank gives the ZRX meaningful range. I am a tall guy at 6'4", and the legroom on the ZRX is in somewhat short supply for me, so my legs are kind of folded up on the bike. That's a common problem for me on a lot of motorcycles, but the ZRX is tight for a leader bike. What's the ZRX like out on the road? I'm going to gear up, I'll bring the camera along, let's find out together. Let's ride.
I'm currently riding Kawasaki ZRX1100, and the first thing I'm noticing is that this bike is a fairly comfortable place to be. I would consider the seating position more of a sport standard style seating position. I've got a little bit of the reach to the bars. They are kind of directly out in front of me. And the one thing I'll note right away is that my feet are actually tucked up pretty high. I don't have an excessive amount of leg room on this machine. And the next thing I'm noticing is that motor is awesome. I'm tooling down through at about 55 miles an hour, and it's very smooth at this speed, and it has just instant pickup. Getting on the brakes are very easy to control. They've got lots of bite to them. There's that nice whoosh of power coming out of the corners. Another thing I'm noticing right away is that the ZRX does not move around a lot on its suspension. It is fairly tightly buttoned down, and I love that Kawasaki decided to put the meat of the power band between about 2,000 and 6,000 RPM. On this particular bike, the modifications to the power plant include a DynoJet jet kit and pod filters, and then the Two Brothers exhaust. So it's not heavily modded, but it runs very, very nicely. One of the things I'm not really fond of on a stock ZRX is the seat, and the way that it's angled, and then the kind of grippy material that Kawasaki used. When I would ride those for any length of time, I would definitely get butt burn. With a short wheelbase and lots of torque, these bikes like to bring the front wheel up. Oh my goodness, that's so addictive. The feel of this power plant and the noise that it makes and the way that it makes power from so low in the RPM range, it is a little bit hard to be good because you just want to get on it every time you come out of a corner. This bike changes direction so easily. Woo! Go through a couple of corners here. Shift quality on the ZRX is excellent. The handling is actually very nimble, and it feels much lighter than its wet weight would suggest. Man, that's awesome. The ZRX has a 5-speed transmission, and one complaint is that it could have used a 6-speed like the ZX11 had. And for back road riding, it's really not an issue. At the speeds I usually ride, I don't miss a 6-speed transmission, but if you are doing more touring on the bike, it's helpful to gear it a little bit taller. Passing power is abundant as soon as you get on the throttle. Yeah, Kawasaki has done such a nice job with the ZRX. It is so entertaining to ride. It's so fun. You can ride it slow and just thoroughly enjoy it. You can do some light-duty touring on it if you wish. You could even do a track day on one of these and have a whole lot of fun. And probably surprise some people in the process. awesome.
All right, man, what a lot of fun. It is always such a treat to get out and enjoy these great retro motorcycles. For me, riding bikes back to back is a great way to learn about them and then also to compare and contrast them. If we look at the Honda first, it has several advantages over the ZRX. The first and foremost is the comfort of the bike and the ergonomics for longer distance riding. The seat on the CB1100 is a little bit more comfortable than that on the ZRX. Additionally, the CB1100 has a little bit more roomy cockpit, especially in the legroom. It has plusher suspension that soaks up the bumps a little bit better than the firmer suspension on the ZRX. And the 6-speed transmission on the CB1100 really gives it an advantage in relaxed riding out on the highway. Although these bikes are both very easy to work on and to service, I think the CB1100 has the advantage in that it is an air-cooled bike, so you don't have the liquid cooling system to ever service. Another advantage that the CB1100 has is the center stand, and that just makes bike maintenance a little bit easier. Another feature that some people will see as an advantage is that the CB1100 is fuel injected. To me, that's not a deal breaker. Styling wise, I think both of these machines are beautiful retro motorcycles, and either one would look right at home with the other classic bikes that I have in the garage. And that brings us to the ZRX. Man, I have loved the ZRX since the first time I've ridden one of these. It is the first retro motorcycle I ever rode. Kawasaki was really a pioneer in developing the retro motorcycles as something that was marketable. And at the time the ZRX hit the market, it was one of the only retro motorcycles out there. Since for me, this is really the OG retro motorcycle, I measure all subsequent retro motorcycles against the ZRX. And it was really surprising to me to go through the spec sheet, and in almost every measurable area of performance, the ZRX outperforms the CB1100. The ZRX is significantly quicker and faster than the CB1100 is. It has better brakes. It has a slicker shifting transmission. It has much better controlled suspension and much more precise and agile handling. It even has a significantly larger gas tank that gives it more range than the CB1100 does. And if you look at the quality of components that Kawasaki used on the ZRX in the suspension department, in the braking department, and even on the swing arm and the axle adjusters, there's really not a comparison when you look at the cheaper, lower grade units that Honda used on the CB1100. Another advantage of the ZRX is the wide range of tire choices available, as well as a wide range of go-fast goodies that are available for the ZRX. Additionally, even though the ZRX is carbureted and the CB1100 is fuel injected, the ZRX has better fueling. Even though this bike is over 26 years old, it has some of the best fueling of any motorcycle I've ever ridden. When you twist the throttle, it does exactly what you want it to do, when you want it to do it, and there are no hiccups whatsoever at any point in the RPM range. If I look at the characters of the two bikes, the CB1100 is very relaxed. It is a very laid-back motorcycle to ride. It is very happy just cruising down through the countryside, and I never feel like it pressures me to go fast. And in that regard, it's very similar to the original CB750 that the CB1100 is meant to emulate. On the other hand, the character of the ZRX is very playful, it's very fun, it's a bit of a hooligan bike. It makes me smile every time I ride one, every time I get on the throttle and enjoy that awesome mid-range. And while I can ride this bike slowly in comfort, when I want to pick up the pace, it is a willing accomplice, and it's just a hoot to ride. And even after all of these years, I really find the ZRX to be an enjoyable experience every time I ride one. As to which of these bikes is better, that really depends on the values of the owners Well, I'd love to know what you guys think. If there are any ZRX fans out there or CB1100 fans out there, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.